for those who are a little newer to your world, I would just love for you to share your journey briefly from being a publicist in the book world to becoming a blogger to now primarily being a course creator, educator, speaker. So a lot of transitions have happened, and along your journey of making these different leaps and pivots, I'd love for you to maybe also share some insight for listeners on when they know it's the time to pivot. Like how do they know when it's time to move on to the next thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, my journey is very much one of constant growth, change, and transformation, and constant um, experiences of just checking things out, testing things out, and trial and error and failure, really. So I started out in PR. That's what I majored in. I lived in New York for some time and did music PR, and then I transitioned into the book PR world. And so I had agency experience, and I was working at HarperCollins at the time, so very corporate America doing book PR. And learned a lot about marketing, learned a lot about PR, learned a lot about people, learned a lot about what it meant to have clients and what it meant to launch products and services, which was able to really help me and support me as I went forward. Kind of like I had checked off all the boxes. I had done a lot in my 9 to 5 type of path and career, but I was craving more. I was craving more connection. I was craving more creativity. I was craving more just really power and independence in my own decision and how I used my time. I was craving the ability to really work with who I wanted to work with. I remember feeling just so kind of uninspired. It was that mindset of like, oh, now I have to do this work that doesn't really light me up or fill me up. So at the time in Los Angeles, because that's where I was living, the whole world of influencer marketing and blogging and YouTubing was really becoming a thing. And not only was it becoming a thing, but it was becoming something that people could actually monetize and make a business out of. People were starting to brand themselves as businesses. And so I started a blog. I had moved to LA. I was new to town. It was also a way for me to get to know people, again, have that connection, have that community. And so I started a blog on lifestyle, motherhood, because I had just had a baby and really enjoyed it. I learned a lot about influencer marketing. That was this new thing. I learned a lot about content creation. I learned a lot about, what this new medium of media really was, of blogging really was. But something else that was kind of coming through that really surprised me was being able to use my expertise and my experience in PR and marketing as a way to really start to connect with brands, partner with brands, and then very quickly monetize my blog. And what ended up happening was that I had a lot of girls in LA that I was friends with, that they were able to amass this really large following, and they were doing fashion blogging. And I was never really able to kind of hone in on that. As beautiful as their content was and how curated their Instagram and Facebook pages seemed, I was never really able to hone in on that look and aesthetic. But what I was able to do is figure out how to monetize. And so these girls and these young women started coming to me, and they're like, Julie, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but how is it that I have way more followers than you, but I'm not making any money, and you have no followers, and you don't have this perfectly curated aesthetic feed, and you don't have all the things that, the blogging community tells you that you have to have, but you're monetizing. And that's when I kind of knew that I was starting to get on something, because there was clearly something that this community of women wanted and needed that I had. So from that, I quickly pivoted my blog from, instead of kind of doing what everyone else was doing, which was talking about lifestyle and fashion and beauty, I started talking about business, and I started talking about branding, and I started talking about marketing. And I saw a major uptick in my blog views. I started to see more engagement on my Instagram. I started seeing people follow me that weren't following me. And I was able to kind of start to connect with the community on a different kind of level that was really unique at the time, because at the time, in today's world, a lot of, there's business coaches out there, and a lot of people teach how to grow your Instagram and how to grow this and how to grow your brand and how to create a brand. Nobody was doing that at this time. And so it allowed me to kind of have a really unique position in the marketplace. But not only that, the fact that I really knew what I was talking about allowed me to create a foundation and to build relationships that have sustained me to now. And so from there, I started consulting, coaching. Then I created the course Pitch It Perfect, which I know that we're going to be talking about. And then about a year after that, I created the podcast, the Influencer Podcast. And then slowly but surely over the years, I started creating more products, creating more services. I'm now a coach. I have mastermind programs where I teach women to essentially do what I was able to do. And it became the business that it is today. So that's kind of the gist of the story. And I'll say that going back to your question about how do you know when you're supposed to pivot, right? Because I talked about how when I was sitting in my cubicle, I knew it was time. And then when I was blogging, I knew it was time to pivot and kind of do more coaching. And then I knew that it was time to pivot and create a podcast. And then I knew it was time to pivot and, create masterminds. I really think that it's a twofold of being honest with yourself about not only what lights you up, but what is it that you're really good at? And then having the confidence to really start before you're ready. And I know that we hear about that a lot. Like, what does that mean to start before you're ready? And I'm happy to kind of dive into what that means to me. But then it's also, I think, another fold of really listening to what the community around you is looking for and needing, and asking yourself how you can be a solution provider for that.